Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Got to break through. Good afternoon to Attleboro's local and state representatives and to the members of the greater Attleboro community. Welcome to the MLK Committee's 27th annual Martin Luther King Holiday Program. Thank you for taking time out of your day to honor the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It's important that we remember Dr. King's message of equality, social justice, brotherhood of man, and nonviolence. His message continues to give us words to live by. This year, 2014, will mark the 50th anniversary of two significant events of the Civil Rights Movement, Freedom Summer and Dr. King's winning of the Nobel Peace Prize. To that end, the MLK Committee chose as its theme, youth activism, moving our communities from violence to nonviolence. While we wanted to commemorate the youth who participated in the Civil Rights Movement, we also wanted to examine a current day issue with which our youth struggle, youth violence, and look at how they can be activists for change. Youth violence includes bullying, threatening remarks, physical aggression, electronic aggression, and school violence. According to the CDC in a 2011 national survey, about 33% of high school students reported being in a physical fight in the 12 months before the survey. 20% reported being bullied on school property, and 16% reported being bullied electronically. About 5% of high school students reported taking a weapon to school in the 30 days before the survey. No doubt the youth in our community have encountered some form of youth violence. As parents, community members, and leaders, we must do our part to build King's beloved community, a community where everyone is treated equally with respect and love, and to live out his principles of nonviolence, which includes attacking the forces of evil, not the person doing evil, and standing up against violence where you're able to. Our future and the future of our youth depend on it. Thank you. We'll start our celebration off with remarks and a proclamation given by City Councilman Frank Cook on behalf of Mayor Kevin J. Dumas and the Municipal Council.
Thank you, Ethel.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. On behalf of Mayor Kevin Dumas and my colleagues on the Municipal Council, I'm joined by Vice President Peter Blair and one of our newly elected councilors, Heather Parika. We want to welcome you to City Hall and thank you for joining us here today on this 27th annual celebration of the life of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and on this holiday in which we can recognize and commemorate his work. For those of us who lived through the civil rights struggles of the 1960s, the life of the person that we celebrate today and the events we saw on television or perhaps for some here witnessed in person are indelibly etched in our minds. Yet, no doubt many of us here today have already thought, as we woke up and knew that this was a holiday, and thought about some of the events that we saw on TV. You know, thought about the life of Dr. King and some of the things that he stood for. Yet it's also not only important, but it's also necessary for us to recognize that struggle and the work of Dr. King, and to ensure that future generations, such as those sitting over here, remain aware of that historical period and all that went through. Consider for a moment that those of us who, like myself, watched the March on Washington on television back in 1963, and perhaps some of you were there, those of us who watched that event are now at least in our mid-50s or older. You know, time has a way of going by so very, very fast. And as a history teacher, that's one of the things that I'm always reminding my students, the importance of learning from the past and being able to not just note it as an historical date, but also in terms of the impact that it has, so that we can continue to embrace a lot of the work and continue the work that Dr. King and so many others gave their lives for. Personally, when I think of Dr. King, I'm reminded of the words of Jesus, spoken on the shores of the Sea of Galilee in the first century, and are recorded in the book of Matthew, that blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. As Ethel mentioned, the mayor's not here, so when the mayor goes out of town as acting mayor, he asked me to fill in. I bring greetings from the mayor. He is in Washington, D.C. doing business this week, so he could not be here. But he did prepare a proclamation, which I'm going to read and then present to Ethel. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Youth Activism, Moving Our Communities from Violence to Nonviolence, January 20th, 2014. Whereas, Martin Luther King Jr., born in Georgia in 1929, and following family footsteps into the Southern Negro ministry, became a crusader for the mid-century civil rights movement, turning local conflicts into, I'm sorry, I feel like I have my glasses. I tried stepping back, but it's not working. Sorry, turning local conflicts into moral issues of national concern. And whereas, convinced that nonviolent resistance was the most potent weapon available to oppress people in their struggle for freedom, Martin Luther King Jr. won the 1964 Nobel Peace Prize for his application of Gandhi's principles to the struggle for racial equity. And whereas, even though Martin Luther King's life was snuffed out by an assassin's bullet on April 4th, 1968, he certainly did his best to try to bring about global peace. Now therefore I, Kevin J. Dumas, Mayor of the City of Attleboro, do hereby proclaim January 20th, 2014 to be Martin Luther King Jr. Day in Attleboro, and do urge all residents to pause a moment in his honor to rededicate ourselves to nonviolent progress toward his great goal of freedom for all. And that is signed and sealed this 20th day of January in the year 2014 by His Honor, Kevin J. Dumas, Mayor of the City of Attleboro. Ethel, congratulations.
Thank you, Councilman Cook and members of the Attleboro City Council. Now it's time for a little music. You see the display in front of us? I'm looking forward to this. So I'd like to bring forward now the Hand Chime Choir from St. John the Evangelist School. The choir, under the direction of Susan Fortin, will perform An American Fantasy, arranged by C. Muckle Bust, and Do Lord, arranged by Valerie Stephenson. So welcome.
It's wonderful to see youth participate in things, and I think music crosses all language and all barriers, and is such a positive effect in our community. And so we're going to play, first of all, American Fantasy, which has several different American tunes in it, and the second one, Do Lord, is a spiritual. So the words of spiritual is, I've got a home in glory land that outshines the sun. So thank you, Teresa, for filling in.
Thank you, Susan Fortin, for accepting my invitation.
Thank you.
They really helped us ring in this holiday celebration. I couldn't resist, I'm sorry. It was right there. Well, now it's time to hear from our local and state representatives. I'm always so well pleased that they come every year and they're faithful and they're grateful and willing to be here. They really help us to kick off this day of celebration for the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. And so we will start with State Representative Paul Heroux. So if you come forward.
Well,
folks. It's really nice to be here today. This morning, I read a quote that said that the only people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the world is the one who actually can change the world. And I think that's really appropriate for someone like Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King. His mission of, a civil rights movement to change the fabric of America for racial equality continues today. We have other civil rights fights that we're looking at. A civil rights fight that I'd like to take on is, mental health equality. Mental health, decreasing the stigma, and that's something that, I borrow the lessons from Dr. Martin Luther King. And I think that every one of us in here probably has something that, we like to find in ourselves that we'd like to leave to the world. And whatever that is, that's the type of thing that we get from Dr. Martin Luther King, from his message to all of us. It's his example that has made the world a better place. And that's something that we should always take with us, whatever we're trying to do. So with that, I'll keep my remarks short because there's a lot of us politicians up here who probably have more than enough to say. But thank you, Ethel, for being here today. And today is a wonderful memorial for Dr. Martin Luther King.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from State Senator John E. Timilty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And I think I'd please the crowd by ceding my time to these wonderful individuals from St. John's. That was certainly an extraordinary and mesmerizing display of your musical talents, and thank you very much. And Ethel, you and the committee put so much work into this, and it's so different and so vibrant each year, and it's great to be here because I think that it's so important for us to remember the legacy and the life of Dr. King, truly one of the greatest Americans ever, and in this wonderful country that we live in, which has done so much for the world and shown so much to the world, to understand that just 50 years ago, there was institutional discrimination built into our government, and that there were places in this country where it was illegal for certain members of our communities to vote. And when we think of what he overcame and the mountains of discrimination and the mountains of prejudice and where he put us, and I think it's always a lesson for us going forward that there's more to do, as Representative Haru said, in very many facets. The idea that the principles of fairness should dictate so much of what we do in life stems from Dr. King and his legacy, and as long as we continue to work towards that end, the world will truly be a better place. So thank you very much for being here, for letting me be here today, Al. Great job.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from State Representative Elizabeth A. Poirier. She looked pretty in her purple dress today.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, first of all, I have to also say thank you to Ethel and her committee for doing this year after year after year, and always affording the people of the Attleboro area the opportunity to remember all the wonderful works of Dr. Martin Luther King, and always surprising us with a wonderful musical oration. And today, how tremendous the students of St. John's were, and one from Bishop Fian. Thank you so much for coming. I had no idea we had such accomplished bell ringers in the area. It was really wonderful to listen to. I thought today, with the theme of today's recognition and remembrance of Martin Luther King, that I could not help but think of another inspirational and heroic figure in our history, that of Nelson Mandela, who we most recently lost. Mandela, like Dr. Martin Luther King, dealt with years of oppression and condemnation, as well as experienced many horrible indignities. Some would say intolerable and inhumane conditions that break the human spirit. And many would certainly become bitter and filled with hatred. The amazing likeness of both of these remarkable men is one of truth, forgiveness, reconciliation, and hope. If our youth could learn any lesson from these men, it would be we don't win by returning violence for more violence, but live by an example of nonviolent respect for all points of view. Hopefully, they will learn as they grow and mature to lead by example, to foster a spirit of productive behavior and inclusive dialogue. If our youth would mirror the behavior of these heroic figures, they would certainly ultimately earn the respect of their peers. It is also important that we continue to remind them, as your committee thankfully does each and every year, about Martin Luther King and how revered he is for the difference he has made in our world. We all need to model ourselves after the great example shown by these individuals who have come before us, and we as adults need to encourage our youth to look to heroes such as these men. We must never give up on the desire for world peace and the ability for all men to live in harmony. Thank you. Thank you, Ethel.
And lastly, we have Lisa Nelson, the Senior District Representative for Congressman Joseph P. Kennedy III.
Thanks, Ethel. And I have to add my comments to you St. John students because I'm in the Chimes Choir at my church, and I know what it's like. It's like patting your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time, and reading music too. It is not an easy thing to do, and kudos to all of you. That was absolutely fantastic. Kudos also to the Martin Luther King Jr. Committee, who's been doing this for 27 years. Please keep doing it forever, because it's so important that we never ever forget the legacy and the accomplishments of Dr. Martin Luther King. And it's only by events such as this that we make sure that that legacy is never forgotten. So thank you so much for all that you do. The Congressman regrets that he can't be here today, but he asked me to read this on his behalf. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. met hate, animosity, and violence with an unwavering faith in the justice of this country and the kindness of its citizens. Today we celebrate not only his life, but the expectations he set for the nation that he believed in. Those ideals are manifested in so many different communities at events like yours and in groups like yours that recognize the power of nonviolence. To see so many young people carrying on Dr. King's work reminds us what is best and strongest in our country. We also pause today to recognize those who stood bravely with Dr. King during his life and after his death, and who have proudly carried forward the fight for liberty and justice for all. Thanks.
But before we conclude, again, I'd like to thank the Ham-Chime Choir from St. John's. Thank you. And again, to our local and state representative, I couldn't do it without your support and your participation, so thank you for coming out once again. And as always, I always like to recognize former members, because I would not be here without some of the founding members who actually started the committee. And I see Gladys Durant, if she would stand, or if it's easy or convenient. Thank you. I see my mom, Rachel Garvin. They started it and kept it going for many years before I even, came along and took it over. It's my honor to try to continue what they've done. So that concludes our program, but before we go, I'd like to invite you to join us at 2 o'clock at All Saints Episcopal Church at 121 North Main Street for the interfaith service at 2 o'clock. Thank you.